It's been more or less about a year since I talked about the Victrix Pro BFG for PS5. We're going to be talking about both the Reloaded for PS5, but also the Reloaded for Xbox. Unboxing both and seeing what differentiates the two, but also what they have in common, because there's a lot more things than one might think. And just before that, I want to thank Turtle Beach for sending both of these for review. Of course, that has no impact on my opinions, no money changed hands, and they see the video at the same time as you. Let's do this. The PS5 model is white and the Xbox model is black. However, you could still get the Xbox model in white, just like you could get the PS5 model in black. That just so happens to be what they sent. Let's put this one aside for a second and open up the PlayStation model. In the box, you'll be greeted by this nice case, a little bit of documentation, and in the case, at the top net, you'll find your super long braided cable, USB-A to USB-C, the controller, the fight pad module, replacement stick gates if you want an 8-way, your dongle for wireless connectivity, 2 replacement D-pads, a tool to undo the modules, a replacement stick cap that is in the mushroom cap style. For now, I'm gonna put this aside. And now let's do the same with the Xbox model. Another case, documentation, super long braided cable, same thing as the PlayStation model, your controller itself, and we still have the 2 octagonal gates, the fight pad, your dongle. I just realized there was a stick cap missing. Here it is, that's my bad. That was also in the PlayStation one. 2 replacement D-pads, which are basically the same except that you have the etched icons to be able to adjust from game volume to chat volume, something you can do on Xbox. On this side, we have the PS model. On this side we have the Xbox model. In terms of the accessories, it's the exact same thing minus the glyphs that you'll find on the buttons, which makes sense. This is PlayStation, this is Xbox, and then the glyphs that you'll find on the D-pads. They feel the same, the plastic, the rubber, the grips, the ergonomics. If you look at the back, you have the same system with the 4 extra back buttons and the hair triggers that are there. The big difference is this one has a trackpad because the PlayStation controller does as well, whereas this one doesn't. Instead, you have an Xbox button. There are a few differences when it comes to function buttons. Here you have your plus, you have your capture, you have your mode button, your home button is here, and then of course your trackpad that you can click as well. Whereas on the Xbox, your select, start, your home, your capture, and your mode button is at the bottom here. Another big difference, and one you may not spot or may not see, is that the Xbox version has rumble. You have rumble in the grips and you have rumble in the triggers, the impulse trigger. So for games that supports that feature on Xbox side of things, you're gonna get that experience. Adaptive trigger, rumble, and gyro is not part of the PlayStation controller, even though the platform supports those features. The PlayStation model has a switch that you can go from one mode to the other. One mode is PC, the second mode is PS4, so if you're using that to play on your PS4, it'll work. The last mode, PS5, which of course to be able to play on your PS5. They both have the 3.5mm jack, and they both have a switch for different modes. I'm going to put this one aside and we'll focus more on the Xbox model for this review, even though I'm not using them on consoles, I'm using them mainly on PCs. So just to recap, except if I state otherwise, any further explanations will apply for both the Xbox and PlayStation model. They both have the ability to use the fight pad, and the fight pad uses kill switches for both models. So you have a nice clicky, responsive button that is flat as well in terms of how the buttons look. And a big deal to a lot of people, for the Reloaded, by default, the ALPS module is no longer, so both sticks now use Hall effect. Hall effect, what it means in a nutshell, is it uses magnets to read the positioning, and it's not prone to drifting like regular potentiometer types of sticks. Big difference with the Victrix BFGs that I haven't seen anywhere else, and I believe that's proprietary, maybe patented, is usually you have to put a latch to activate hair trigger, whereas on the Pro BFG, hair trigger is the default state. You have to remove a latch to be able to get the full analog. And once you have this pushed to the side, you hold it down and then you release it. And now you're able to have the analog. But the moment you push that, the hair trigger is back. Probably the fastest switch that I've seen on the market. This is something I'd say is fast enough to be able to potentially use in the middle of a fight. It is a trigger stop, so you don't feel the actuation of a button. Rather, it is shortened and it is corrected in software to give you 0 to 100, and you have extremely low travel. Barely a millimeter, maybe two. It's extremely short. And though I usually prefer the actuation of a button, I'd say that's the best trigger stop on the entire market. Ergonomics, we are definitely in Xbox territory, more so than in PlayStation territory. If you like that asymmetrical style that we usually get with Xbox, but one thing that the Victrix Pro BFG is one of the very few controllers in the entire world to do this is by using this small little tool. And as you do that, you're able to remove the module and turn it around like this, and everything is still going to work. You can go symmetrical. If you want to have the fight pad, you're going to be able to swap this in, and now you have something that is better geared for fighting games, which in my original review, I called it and I will call it again. This is probably one of the better controllers for fighters in the entire market. One, because you have extremely satisfying 6-button array fight pad. You have great D-pad as well. We're talking about membrane D-pad, by the way. And if we're using the traditional button, we're talking about membrane face buttons, but these are kill micro switches, so they're very, very satisfying. You could potentially play like this, change the stick gap for the tallest one, and play like that if this is how you like to play your fighting games. Really, the possibilities are endless. This is the type of controller that you're going to shapeshift based off of the game that you play and how you prefer to play said games. And now, because you have Hall effect sticks, you also have something that is better geared, better tuned for shooters as well as fighting games. Now that we've covered the controllers, what they share, what is different from one to the other, let's go ahead and jump into software so I can show you what it looks like. Once you are in the app, you have a bunch of different things that you can set for yourself. This gives you an oversight, but you cannot modify from the splash screen itself. Rather, you want to go and pick one of the options up there. We are on the latest firmware. Awesome. If we want to recalibrate, we can just go ahead and hit X. We want to hold it for a couple of seconds. It's going to show you how to recalibrate. If you change the gate, it's very important that you redo that process, because different gate is going to have different readings because the shape itself is not the same. One of the things that we can do is remap the buttons. Pick each button one by one and just put whatever you want. And one thing that may surprise you is that the back paddles are not there, and that is because it has its own menu up top where you can remap all 4 back paddles. So it'll show you all the different options that you can make it. Just click on the paddle you want and then push the button that you want to map it to, or you can just go ahead and disable it altogether. So for the time being, I'm just going to disable them. When looking at analog sticks, you can mirror your dead zone, you can swap your sticks, you can invert your axes, you can address also the dead zone of your trigger. Now, of course, if you have the hair trigger activated, it does it for you. So that's basically more if you want to have them have the full analog motion. You can also then behave to a different button, but assuming that you leave them a trigger, you could address your dead zone. You can mirror it, you can make them independent. Audio, where you can address the volume that'll come out of your 3.5mm jack, and you have presets. And when you're on an Xbox controller, you're gonna be able to address the game and chat using the shortcut. So mode, if you do the left, you'll notice that, well, I'm on this right now, so kind of cheating. But if I'm not on the game and chat balance, you can see that this addresses the volume, the mix. And same goes with your up and down for the volume. The up and down volume you can also do on PlayStation, by the way. So same goes, you hold mode and you do up and down from the D-pad. And then the last thing that is different specifically to the Xbox model is that you have your vibration, and you can address how much you want the vibration to occur. You can independently address your impulse or your rumble that's found in the grip. I must say it is not on par with first-party rumble. It does sound a little bit on the cheaper side. I wouldn't say as cheap as like what you find from third-party non-branded controllers, but it is also not on par with what you'd have from a Microsoft controller. Let me bring it to the microphone so that you can hear it for yourself. Diagnostics, so that's basically everything we just went through, but this time it's more to test rather than to address, which in itself is, you know, all good. If you want to test your buttons, make sure everything works. This is how you do it with the diagnostics, and goes with the back paddles, the sticks, the triggers. You have some documentation and guides and everything you might need. And lastly, the update. One last difference that is quite important to mention between the Xbox and PS model is the app itself. If you are on Xbox, the app is available for download, which means that you're gonna be able to address your controller on the Xbox itself. Whereas the PlayStation model, the app is only available on PC. You're not able to download an app on the PlayStation software to be able to address your controller. So that's something to keep in mind. If this is something you want to do, just know that on the Xbox model, no problem. On the PlayStation model, unfortunately, you're going to need a PC to make adjustments. Moving to the audio test. Stick tremor is present. Axis snapping isn't. There is a little, not a whole lot, but there is a little bit of stick snapback. Circularity adjustment is not offered in this controller, so this is what we have to work with. There is definitely a little bit of inner dead zone. Not a whole lot, but it's present. However, there is no gap dead zone that I can perceive, and there is a little bit of outer dead zone, as is almost always the case. Stick tension sits at approximately 70 TGF, and stick resolution sits at 0.0010. For D-pad, your diagonal focus, very good. I mean, these are satisfying membranes to use. They feel nice, they're bouncy with just enough firmness that you know you're not going to do any accidental push. For rolling test, also very consistent. Of course, this is something that you could potentially address the D-pad if you want to have something that is better adapted to the playstyle that you have, but either way, those membranes feel phenomenal. Adjacent direction, feasible, not too hard, very consistent from up to down arrow. Same goes from left to right. This is a very well tweaked D-pad. Accidental input looking very good, and again, some D-pad might cause this more than others, but at least with the default one, it's looking really good. And your left to right is also looking quite good. Not, I wouldn't say perfect, but it's looking mighty good, and some D-pads might work better for that. Something like your cross would probably help preventing that from happening. Center pivot, we do have one. It's hard to not hit any key, but you do have a pivot, and the center actuation is also very easily done. This is such a great D-pad. Like, especially, it's one thing when I tested it a year ago, but now we're having tested, you know, more than 100 controllers easy. It's a D-pad that stands out. It's extremely well executed. Oof, there is so little dead zone that it would be almost little enough to say that there isn't any, but there is a little bit of it. At the end of the actuation, however, that's where you definitely have a good range of dead zone. I'd say maybe 4, maybe 5 millimeters. Dampening, definitely, without the hair trigger being activated. With it activated, no, not quite. And hair trigger, as we mentioned earlier, this is the default state of that controller, which is quite unique. And if I just want to activate, right now it's not activated. If I just want to activate it, I just quickly push this, you hear the click, and there it is. It's now activated. Those triggers are so sensitive that even the resting, that's potentially a challenge. It would be a challenge for me, I can already tell you. It's so sensitive that even just resting my finger on the trigger, like in you know, what I would think is resting state, activates the ADS. So, you know, on the left side, I'd actually remove it, because otherwise it's too sensitive for my own tastes. All right, let's do. Oh, interesting. Wait a minute. Okay, there it is. Here, let me restart. I don't know what was happening here. For a Hall effect stick, I like it. It's a very high tension, so you're gonna have to train with it. That's maybe the only thing, but beyond that, it does feel good. It's responsive. You don't get the jitter that I usually would expect with cheap Hall effects, so that tells me it is definitely not a cheap stick. It's just a module that has a lot of tension, or at least more than I'm starting to get used to. So that probably has a negative impact on my score. Let's do another run and see what it looks like. To me, it's clear that this is one of those controllers that you have to use with a raised stick. And I don't usually play with those, but for the sake of proving a point, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. Yeah, the tension feels so much lighter now that I have a higher stick. Yeah, like such a massive jump just because I'm using the high riser stick. To me, it's a must with this controller because the tension is so high, and if you have big hands and somehow you want to slap something more on that, you might even benefit from that as well. But yes, if you're going shooters, I think that's a necessity for this controller. But let's move to Street Fighter. This is such a great controller for fighting. It's wild. I wish I could literally, I mean, you know what? I can just do that because I do feel like I'm a little close to the left stick, but you know, that's easily addressed by just moving the module out of the way. Man, it's so good. Without a doubt, a very good fighting game controller. It is wild how good this controller feels. The D-pad is peak D-pad, and just peak for those kinds of games, and the fact that you can adjust it to do something else very well. I think I forgot for a moment just how versatile and good at many things that this controller can be. Man, those buttons are so satisfying. Not a whole lot of buttons on the market that feels like these. Oops. Sounds like a symphony here. You definitely hear them. If this is something you mind, you may not like that aspect of them. Personally, I don't mind it. In fact, I like it. These buttons feel good, man. They feel like a what's the word? They feel like a fidget toy. I just want to push them, you know what I mean? These triggers are so light. They weigh nothing. Like, I can't... Nothing. They absolutely weigh nothing. And that's something that's interesting. If you like the idea of a hair trigger, but you just don't prefer the feel of a hair trigger because they weigh so little, you could easily find yourself using those much faster than a regular trigger because of the tension. That's another benefit that this controller has for itself. Let's move towards performance. Performance may be one of those areas where it's not quite what you would have hoped to see. Not that it's bad, it's actually not bad at all. And for the record, it's almost neck and neck between the PS5 and Xbox model. The Xbox version was slightly faster on both buttons and stick latency, but it's negligible. It's almost the same. Polling rate is 125 Hz for both. And that's where some people may be disappointed. Potentially the sticks would have felt better if we had a higher polling rate because the stick resolution was quite good. The numbers, but I want to stress this, it feels great, and considering what we have to work with, it's definitely tournament worthy in my opinion. But it's one area where, considering the price point and considering what a lot of things these controllers stand for, I'd like to see improved on a future iteration. One last thing I haven't mentioned, they both have a 2000 milliamp hour battery, which will give more or take up to 20 hours of usage before needing to charge them. They both retail at $209.99 USD, so they're not cheap, right? This is an expensive controller. And this is a controller that, while it is not cheap, it is also, in my opinion, that it does a lot to offer a wide variety to gamers that are playing a lot of different types of games. Here's where there's a little bit of a struggle for me. If you are almost exclusively a fighting game kind of player, and this is probably where I would recommend it the most, That's not to say that there aren't other controllers that will do well on the market, but this is extremely well tailored for fighting games. But at the same time, if you play fighting games and shooters, it's nice that you now have better sticks and more reliable sticks over time than what you had on the previous model. So it is versatile. But if we're looking at shooters, I feel like you could find better. If we're looking at fighters, that might be a little harder, but there are other options. So the question then becomes, okay, but how much do you have to spend to have another option? And do you need to have multiple controllers? Which I don't think is a bad thing, especially nowadays with the wide variety of games that we have, the wide variety of platforms that we have. I do think there is value in having multiple controllers based off of the types of games that you play. But there's something I gotta give to both the Victrix Xbox and Victrix PS5 is, as far as just having one controller that does a lot of things great, they're hard to beat. They're genuinely hard to beat. And I think with the Hall effect, it now gives you a more appealing incentive to go that route. Even though you're going to pay a hefty penny for it, you'll ultimately be able to find multiple scenarios where you're going to make benefit of those advantages that it has. And it's not exclusively for fighting games and shooters. It's a phenomenal controller for platformer. It's extremely versatile in the things that you can take out, the modules that you can flip. There's a lot of things that you can do to shape shift it to the game that you're trying to play or that you're trying to master, or just the flavor of the month. You know what I mean? Like, you're not really lacking option. I personally love vibration. So to me, the Xbox version, if you're a PC player, the Xbox version is the version to get. But if you're a PlayStation player, then, you know, the question doesn't need to be asked. That's definitely the one you need to go with. So here's the one last thing I want to leave you with. How about if you own the previous model? Don't get stuck in FOMO. If your previous model is working fine, you don't need to upgrade, because for 95%, it is exactly the same controller. Polling rate, latency, button latency, all that is identical. The features, the software, there is not a difference. The one huge difference that you'll have are the sticks, which means that if the model you bought a year, 2 years ago is still working fine, wait for that one to give out and then buy the reloaded model. You don't need to upgrade until your sticks are tired, until your sticks no longer work to a level that you find acceptable. That's when you want to upgrade to the Victrix Reloaded BFG. And for those who do not have a Victrix, we had a whole video covering why I think this could be appealing to you, but let me know in the comment box. Do you think that there is appeal in having a controller that is extremely versatile at doing a lot of things great? Or would you rather have multiple models that potentially cost less, but will be better tailored for specific games based off of the things that you play? Thank you very much for clicking and watching the video. As always, please consider dropping a like if you enjoyed the content, and to comment if you have any inputs. My name is Clef. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.